We're live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Piping Hot. We're so excited that you are on to join us today. I'm Amy Kapolnek, a growth strategist and a fractional CMO at the fwrd Group. I work primarily with indie CPG brands. I have for my entire 19-year career, and I help them attract customers and drive revenue.
And I'm Lacey Norton. I am a commercialization and operations executive. And Amy and I have both spent a lot of time inside of brands and working with brands where connection is really at the core of how they operate. And the two of us have recently been having quite a few conversations around how connection is changing and the landscape is shifting.
Yeah, and I think, when we look at marketing channels, the big three, Meta, so Instagram and Facebook, TikTok and Google, they're just getting more and more expensive every year, but they're delivering less and less. So from an indie brand perspective, it's extremely difficult to compete against these enterprise brands with manpower and million-dollar budgets behind them.
Absolutely. As the return is diminishing, it's certainly forcing not only, smaller indie brands, but to be quite honest, like larger scale brands as well. How, rethinking how they build relationships that actually last with their consumers and their audience.
So I think something that Lacey and I spoke a lot about offline was, why does this matter now? And we've already established that paid reach is becoming just cost prohibitive across the board. And I think the fact of the matter is, one, the old playbook doesn't work anymore. And two, if you're an indie brand, that playbook that the enterprise brands may have created or are using is probably not going to work for you. So you have to be creative.
Absolutely. I think in some of these more monetized platforms that we're seeing, like you mentioned, Amy, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Google, we're also seeing just like a tuning out of the audiences and, seeing them craving something that's a bit more genuine, a bit more authentic, and just in general.
Yeah, I think you hit something when you said like tuning out the noise. The consumers nowadays, they're just so ad fatigued because they open up Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and they're just getting pummeled with ads. And so we're really in this moment right now about reallocating, but also revolutionizing the marketing playbook, the connection with the customer. And how to go beyond just the big three.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's certainly a rebalancing that's occurring. Something you and I were discussing, in some of our offline conversations is this notion of digital grassroots emerging, smaller spaces that are feeling more like the early days of brand community. But with our lives having shifted so much onto these digital platforms, there's these new tools that, we've begun to observe, as well as others that, community is beginning to take form in that is less ad focused.
Yeah, less ad focused and definitely more community focused, like you said. And I think in the last year, brands have really looked at the beyond the big three into these non-conventional or not really tapped channels. And so I would love to just talk about what that looks like, the new channels that are really shaping this shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, Reddit, Substack, and even OnlyFans, I think have been, leading the forefront. They're all very different spaces, but at the through line between all of them is that there's an authenticity that exists between and amongst them all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, personally, Reddit is my favorite right now. That doesn't say anything about Substack or OnlyFans. Every channel is going to be used differently. depending on what type of brand you are, what type of category you're in, industry you're in. But personally, Reddit has been the one that I find the most interesting. I think it's really about creating real conversation there, social listening, accountability, because, and we'll unpack this much later, but the users on Reddit, they're in the know. They are super savvy, and they can we swear on this? They can smell bullshit from a mile away. So anyways, Reddit is personally my favorite right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation happening on Reddit for sure.
But there's others too.
Absolutely. I mean, where I find myself personally spending a lot of time right now is in Substack. I really love that it's bringing back really rich storytelling, and long form content, which, you know, I do think many are craving, despite the fact that everything has become so short form. There's also a lot of founder-led engagement. So it's a really great platform to bring voice to founders, which I think is really, really important, and actually, you know, creates a purpose and allows brands to really speak like what their real intention is. And there's a lot of trust in Substack right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Rare Beauty is one of the brands in the beauty industry that dove into Substack, and I think is doing it really well. And they're leaning into all the topics that you just said: founder-led content, you know, perspective from employees, mental health awareness, you know, really driving their purpose there. I think OnlyFans is really fascinating too, because, you know, we think of these racy headlines, but I think if you know, the feet pics and this and that, but I think if you go beyond those racy headlines, it's really a lesson in the taboo voices, perhaps, I guess I would call it, and the actual power that these voices are carrying, which is just so fascinating.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then one that I've really had my eye on for quite some time is TYB, that was and is founded by Ty Haney, Outdoor Voices founder as well. She essentially created TYB when she exited Outdoor Voices. As we all know, she's back in Outdoor Voices, which is super exciting. And TYB just raised $11 million this summer, and it's
so
really
crazy.
I know, but it also like it shows that there's indicators that are leaning towards like what is happening on digital, and it rewards participation, which, you know, is really, you know, it's moving away from, you know, using and leveraging influencers as the primary voice of your brand. And it's actually, you know, what I love about TYB is that it's engaging brand super fans, and it's actually rewarding them for what they tend to do just very naturally, which is sharing their love and their affinity for the brands that, you know, shape how they live and their lives. So there's like, there becomes to see like shared value in the engagement. And, you know, I think that is, it's not innovative in the sense that like they're already doing it, but it's actually rewarding those who are like your most authentic fans and really love your brand.
Yeah, it's almost giving those normal folks like me and you, you know, the platform to amplify their voice, which again just brings authenticity to the brand. I think there's also others I find very fascinating. So LinkedIn has had a year so far. I mean, we don't even have time to unpack that. I mean, look at us, we're streaming live on LinkedIn. WhatsApp also. I mean, worldwide, WhatsApp is commonplace, but I really see adaptability in the US increasing this year, especially with, you know, WhatsApp is owned by Meta. A lot of people don't know that. And Instagram actually has an integration in their backend with WhatsApp Business, which a lot of people also
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Yes. And so they're really trying to push WhatsApp, which, to be honest, is great, because it's one of the most, I think it's the best and most iconic places to actually create community. But we also have Discord, which is the gamers, sometimes like the, you know, Gen Z, Gen Alphas now, Roblox, which is totally Gen Alpha. Yeah, there's a lot of other channels that have not really been unpacked, I think, as well.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think what we've been seeing and what you and I have been having a lot of conversation about is, a lot of these platforms are just introducing a level of intimacy. They're creating opportunity for word of mouth and opportunity to build community, like in this new era where we're spending so much time online. I mean, I'm always a huge advocate for in real life activations. I mean,
Same.
that is my number one. But there, with the limitations of scale, in real life community, I think many of these platforms, which we'll chat about a bit more, are creating that opportunity to engage in a much broader sense with the audience and customers.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it goes back to what you were saying before about digital grassroots. So I'm actually curious, how do you see these platforms creating that same energy we used to build, like IRL activations?
Like before these platforms existed.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm just
Yeah.
curious because as you know, I call it the phygital world. It's this
Yeah.
blend between
Yeah.
phygital and digital, but you will not have the same experience on digital that you would in the physical world. So I'm curious because you're kind of a guru in this and in the grassroots, community building efforts, curious to see to learn your viewpoint on that.
Well, I mean, I think the foundation is ultimately still the same, in the sense that like it's creating opportunity for conversation and it's allowing audiences to be seen and actually participate in like the bigger conversation. And so I think the best digital communities are capturing, this essence by making a space for participation and contribution. And like, why wouldn't we want that?
Yeah.
If we're building something for our audience, why are we not wanting to engage them? And so in lieu of, perhaps not being able to scale in real life, in the same way, I think these platforms are creating another opportunity for us to be engaged with our audiences, but moving it online, but keeping the essence of connection, and contribution, and in many conversations, keeping the conversation alive.
Yeah, and I think that brings me to my next question I had for you, about keeping conversation alive, being authentic, still, building community authentically. TYB really, I mean, I heard about it. It wasn't really on my radar until me and you were talking offline and you brought it up to me. I never really looked at it as a marketing channel. I almost kind of looked at it as like affiliate sort of, but it's this new left field channel that isn't community. It's not social. It's not live stream like a Flip was. It's like it's
Yeah.
this whole new category. So and it's so interesting to me. You touched a little bit on it, but can you just unpack like what stands out to you about it? Like how do you see it in the mix with all these other like social platforms essentially?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's fascinating, and we're seeing a lot of like
Yeah.
larger brands like Glossier and Say, emerging on the platform or leveraging the platform, I should say. And so it's turning audiences into stakeholders and, giving them the opportunity to be rewarded for their participation. And I think that that's really the future of brand loyalty, like staying grassroots, staying connected to those who are most loyal. And I'm really excited to see how TYB evolves and what's next. I think we're going to see a lot more of it. It's giving brands the opportunity to, like I said, engage their most loyal fans in a completely unique way.
Yeah, I am so intrigued to see what TYB future hold and what happens with
Mhm.
them.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so I'm curious to know, like, how, Amy, especially with your clients, how are you seeing brands connect, meaningfully across these channels, especially, when budgets are tight? What do you find that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think number one, you have to look at your overall marketing strategy, zoom out a little bit and say, what is our bandwidth? We're going to have to cut something to invest into something else. Because they just don't have the manpower and they don't have the resources to try everything.
Yeah.
I think secondly, with that, is they have to figure out which one is the right risk for me, because diving into Reddit or OnlyFans or Substack, this is a long-term play. You're not going to get results immediately. And also, if you're diving into OnlyFans and your core audience is like turned off from OnlyFans, then that's obviously going to be a conflict of interest, and that can actually tank a brand instead of elevate a brand. Yeah. And so I think that's number two, is like choosing which one that you are going to put the time into.
Yes.
And I think, how much time are you going to put in it? There are some, like we saw TikTok Shop, it's just transformed and evolved year after year after year. But everybody knows that in the TikTok Shop sphere, you can't dip your toe into that. I mean, it was just like what Pete Zick, another former board member, was talking about today. Yeah. You have to go all in. And so it's like, well, with Reddit, do you have to go all in? OnlyFans, you have to go all in. Substack, do you have to go all in? Like, and if we do go all in, again, where are we taking the resources to do that? And is that a calculated risk to do? But I say all that to say that, the smartest ones are really showing up authentically. We talk about authentically all the time, especially in brand marketing, community building. I know people are just so sick of that word, but it's really the truth. The brands that are succeeding, they're not chasing scale. They're not chasing a sale. They're listening. Yeah. They're leaning in and not saying anything at all, and just absorbing of what is going on in the natural environment. And when they do reach out, it's done very calculated and in a way where, hey, if there is a backlash, like, I'm going to be accountable for it. But I think, generally speaking, they're building intimacy, and I really don't love that word, but it's this personal connection that you wouldn't be able to get anywhere else, especially on Reddit, which is why I favor that platform a little bit more than others. But then, and again, I think also my last thing I would say is showing up consistently. You can't just go like the TikTok Shop analogy. Like, you have to go all in. Like, you can't sometimes, you can't just look at it every, twice a month. You have to really put the effort and the time in there.
You bring up, I think, two really, really great points that are worth just reiterating, is like knowing the audience to determine like which of these platforms may be worth exploring for your brand and for your audience. And then the other is speaking of budget. And while a lot of these platforms are not necessarily monetized, you spoke a lot about resources. And so like there is still an investment to be made. Yeah. And speaking of consistency, like when you do think of like Instagram, it's almost like a set it and forget it, kind of mentality when you do sponsored ads and such. And so, I think that is also why we're seeing higher levels of engagement, is it does require more resourcing, but like more involved resourcing and engagement with the audience through these platforms. I mean, I know you love Reddit. And I've been in certain industries where Reddit has really been at the forefront of like conversation within the industry. I mean, I've always perceived Reddit to be quite male driven, but, I'm really interested to hear from you. Are you seeing, successful community being built for women in that platform?
Definitely. I see it a lot in the fashion, beauty, and wellness categories. We're seeing spaces like, skincare addiction, or K-beauty, or, fashion, just as one that says like fashion. Yeah. And again, the brands are really using that to see what's trending, what's everyone talking about, what are their gripes on the products, like what what's their feedback? Like, do they mention my brand or do they not, or is it not even on the radar? Because the fact of the matter is, and this is probably why, well, one of the reasons why I love Reddit so much. And this is not a diss to any of the other platforms at all. It's just the Reddit users are so incredibly savvy.
Yeah.
You like I mentioned before, like you cannot put anything past them. Like they're just too educated and in the know. They're honestly the trendsetters in their groups of friends, family, etc. So anyways, yeah, I think it's just, again, reiterating, it's really important for brands to not sell, just listen, know when to show up, know when to be accountable and say my bad, because you will have these Reddit users push back. And men, women, doesn't matter, any gender, they will all push back. And I think also when appropriate, share knowledge, but without a catch. Whoever is going into Reddit should never go in with any type of ultimatum or agenda. But yeah, we are seeing the shift. We're seeing the shift to more, I'm not going to say male or female dominated categories, but yeah.
Just generally.
Generally.
Yeah. I mean, I think, what's interesting is what we're seeing emerge is a lot more depth, like smaller, smarter, more human connection through these digital platforms. And there is opportunity to scale, certainly, but there's also the essence of being more connected with some of these new platforms that are emerging.
Yeah. And I think, when we talk about this shift, it is really, and again, we talked about this earlier, it really is from marketing to audiences to building with communities. And community is becoming the new marketing channel. Hard stop. Doesn't matter what platform it's on.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Which is funny because it's where we started.
Exactly. It really is. It really is.
So yes, I mean, we all know like the most valuable way for any brand to grow is through earned. And, I think these platforms are presenting, the opportunity to engage in a really authentic and meaningful way with audiences. If you do so thoughtfully. And I think that there's so much value on both sides for both the brand and consumers to be had when done well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if there's any takeaway or anything you take away here, I think the bottom line is that connection is not disappearing. It's evolving, and the desire for connection is actually increasing.
Yeah.
And why is that? Well, mainly because of the digital world that we're living in and the social media world we're living in. We're seeing that disconnect. And especially I think the social bandwidth of certain generations is just getting worse and worse. And whether they realize it or not, connection is becoming more valuable and more desired.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really amazing chatting this through with you.
I
will share that we are going to be evolving this conversation into a lunch and learn so we can have more dialogue. I think we've just barely scratched the surface of, what these channels are providing and offering. So I'm really looking forward to diving in a bit deeper and sharing some more examples and frameworks and ways that we're seeing all of this come into practice.
Exactly. So if you're a part of the board, don't miss that lunch and learn in a few weeks. Like Lacey said, we'll be unpacking all these different channels with examples, framework, ways to put it into practice. But for now, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.